So hello, thank you for joining tonight. I'm Joss, the curator of the online exhibition entitled Being In Between Being, which includes a virtual event series as well. This artist talk with Sam Moyer-Kardos is the third event in the series, and then there will be 3 more after the new year. Being In Between Being showcases intermedia works by queer and women artists exploring aspects of identity related to in-betweenness, both in the context of medium and textuality, but also in terms of embodiment and knowing or understanding. This virtual collection in particular is concerned with individual and collective techniques that assist in addressing interwoven modes of oppression, an address that can include resistance alongside rest, examination and creation, and quiet dreams amidst bold celebrations. The exhibition artworks and catalog can be found at the SUNY Buffalo's Lower Art Gallery website, and I'll post the link into the chat right now for your convenience. For partnership and support, I thank the UB Department of Art and James H. McNulty Chair of English. Without either, this exhibition and series would not have been possible. It is with great excitement that I introduce Sam Moyer-Kardos. I was fortunate enough to meet them while I was developing the proposal for this exhibition during the fall of 2019. I was first engaged by the range of style and technique in their work, and then I fell in love with the pair of hand molds that were tucked in a cabinet in their then apartment as studio space. After that meeting, I plan to include 1 portrait, 2 abstract pieces, and the hand molds. Later, with the pandemic changes to the exhibition, namely no longer competing with wall space limitations, 3 new 2020 portraits were added to the show. One being Big Packer Energy, which is not only the title of Sam's talk this evening, but also a piece that encapsulates much of the exhibition's exploration of tensions between intimacy and exposure, historical tradition and queer innovation, and voyeuristic violence and sensual joy. Sam Moyer-Kardos is a New York City-based artist who identifies as gender non-binary and queer. Their intention is to paint portraits that put LGBTQ plus people front and center, rather than being silenced by societal norms. Their art borrows from traditional figure painting styles and explores how heteronormative stereotypes carry over into queer relationships. Their primary interest is queer people and their environments. Faces are sometimes cropped out, and the figures are angled in a way to direct the viewer to intimate moments, such as the touch between 2 people. Overall, Sam wants to create a moment where the viewer can visualize themselves as the subject of the painting, someone who is marginalized. Please join me in warmly welcoming Sam Moyer-Kardos.
Hey, all right, thanks for that introduction. Thanks so much for everyone for joining us. I really appreciate the support in my tiny New York apartment. Not in my studio today, it's too cold to leave the apartment. All right, so yeah, just to start off, this painting in the background is probably the first one I'm going to be talking about. It's pretty big. I did it back in 2014, and it's been through a lot. It traveled with me through Chicago, Virginia, and now here in New York. Yeah, let's see. I'm gonna start sharing my screen now. So, share, present. All right, cool. Okay. So yeah, when I first started doing this painting, it was right when I was applying for grad schools. I think this is really what like started to kind of form my practice. But yeah, so it's in acrylic. I hadn't started using oil paint yet. So you'll notice through the rest of my work, like the style is a little bit different. It's a little more like splotchy. I added a lot more kind of color through it. But yeah, so I'm gonna probably talk about the different concepts. Like a lot of my paintings probably have like this concept behind it. Like I see something and I respond to it. So back in 2014, that's where we're at. Before there was marriage equality across the country. Before there was marriage equality that was legal across the country in every state, some large corporations, specifically Coca-Cola, for example, They started showcasing gay couples in their commercials, which I think they thought was pretty groundbreaking at the time, but it felt very fake and gimmicky. Um, Also, think back to like Pride Month, every year Pride Month, specifically Burger King, Pride, Whopper, like it gets really ridiculous. Um, but what I'm getting at is these companies like to insert themselves specifically during Pride Month. It's sort of manipulating our trust in them by making us think they accept our identities, but in return, it's like buy our products. Um, like I should love seeing LGBTQ representation like in a mainstream platform, but the fact that it's a commercial makes me feel like these agencies kind of put on a show to gain clout, you know? Um, but I thought, so what would my Coca-Cola commercial look like? I knew that I wanted it to feel more natural. So I got out my camera, uh, put on a self timer, and just started shooting me and my wife just lounging in our living room. So yeah, a lot of my work focuses on intimate moments between queer couples. The idea specifically of cropping is to just redirect focus to a particular moment in the painting. Yeah, I want to represent the reality of the subject and just redirect that voyeuristic gaze. Um, Here I have the angle pointing towards an intimate moment between like my hand resting like very lightly on Caroline's thigh. That's my wife. Because these moments aren't normally like what the viewer is looking at. And when you think of like the female nude in fine art, you know, they're also lounging, they're submissive, and this, you know, this allows men to insert themselves like into this fantasy that they've created for themselves. So I wanted to take that and show a moment where, you know, I don't need them. Like this is like my like moment of like queer identity, and like there's no like place for you here. Um, all right, moving forward, these two pieces, they look very different than the one I just showed you, very abstract. The focus is more on color, gradients, shapes. Um, but the reason for this, so I hadn't painted in like a few years. So I, you know, went to Chicago to study painting at the School of the Art Institute. And like, I think like a lot of art students will say this, but like grad school just like really fucking breaks you. And you just like listen to your advisors, and you realize when you come out of school, you're just like, that's not who I am. Like I was just doing it for you. So really I was just like sunk in this depression. I did not paint for like 3-4 years. And so I moved to New York City, and I was like, I need to like just do something. So I just like stretched these canvases, and I felt like I need like some sort of prompt. Like I don't want to paint figuratively. I don't want to like focus on that. I want to focus more about like the paint. So I gave myself this prompt. I was like, okay, let's take the letters that spell out queer. Like, oh, I'm queer. And let's like dissect each letter individually and just like distort it, repeat it. Um, and this is what I came up with. These are the letters. On the right is Q, which sometimes I refer to as the noodle painting. And then on the right is R. Um, but yeah, let's see. I didn't, instead of being very representational and figurative, I like the focus was really just like I wanted to like free myself of that. Um, but yeah, I think like in a way they do kind of line up with my work, because I think in a lot of my paintings I'll show kind of like this doubling of like identities, how like one object or one subject like interacts with the other one. So in a way, yeah, it's still kind of focusing on that intimacy. Um, yeah, let's go to the next one. All right. So now, after I like gained my confidence with like oil painting, which by the way, I feel like only recently learned how to use oil paint. And so the like abstract ones were kind of just like learning how like oil paint works. And then so I felt like, yes, I have not painted in a few years. Let's just kind of go back and go like to my roots, you know? Um, so let's see. Um, right. Return my focus back onto queer people. When I first moved to New York, I did not know anyone, especially any queer people. So I, as most gay people do, they take to the internet to form online friendships. And that's exactly what I did. And so that's how I first met this couple, Quinn and Dennis. Um, my goal in painting is to represent LGBTQ people, specifically couples that blur the lines of gender binary and sexual identity. I chose to paint Quinn and Dennis because Quinn's pansexual, Dennis is bisexual. Something Quinn and Dennis told me is that since they are a straight passing couple, they get a lot of people assuming that they're straight, and they have a lot of heteronormative privilege. Their discrimination more so comes from the colors of their skin. They sometimes will receive dirty looks because they are a biracial couple. With that in mind, I wanted to bring up an interesting quote by Audre Lorde that I found after finishing this painting. Great. So within the lesbian or community, I am Black. And within the Black community, I am a lesbian. Any attack against Black people is a lesbian and gay issue because I and thousands of other Black women are part of the lesbian community. Any attack against lesbians and gays is a Black issue because thousands of lesbians and gay men are Black. There's no hierarchy of oppression. So when I first painted this, I of course knew that Quinn and Dennis were a biracial couple, but at the time I was thinking about it like, oh, I'm painting a queer couple. But what this quote really illustrated for me is that I don't get to decide that this painting is a queer painting. Dennis will always be queer and Black, and they will always be queer and a biracial couple. They're always all of those things. So this painting has to represent all of those identities, whether I'm meant for it to or not. All right. Now, taking it back, this is actually, I'm kind of like on this weird timeline where nothing is linear. I'm like taking you guys back to 2016 now, where I made these two sculptures entitled My Fingers Are My Dick. And if you get it, you get it, but I'm going to explain it. So, so during my time at School of the Art Institute, I became fascinated with these mold making kits that most likely men were buying for their girlfriends. It was a kit used to make a mold of the boyfriend's dick. And it felt so ridiculous to me. It felt controlling to have your partner like pleasure themselves by using a dildo that replicated their dick. Like, once again, just like inserting themselves in every situation. It just made me think about how guys think of their dicks as trophies. So similar to like the Coca-Cola ad, I just wanted to recreate like what a lesbian or a queer person's version would be. So I ended up like buying that mold making kit, and I just inserted my non-existing dick, which, you know, are my fingers. And yeah, I don't know. What I mean by that is sometimes I think people confuse queer sex having to simulate straight sex. And it's like, you don't need to have a dick to have sex. So this is what came out of it. All right. Moving on. The title of this artist talk, Big Packer Energy. So really, like, what the heck is a packer, right? I would describe a packer as soft silicone penis that's made for trans men, trans people to wear. you wear it in your underwear or your jockstrap. It's really there to simulate a penis so you feel more aligned with your identity. And look, you don't, I know I said like it's for trans people, but you don't need to be trans to feel like this works for you. Like, I'm not a trans man, but like this is me in the painting and this is something I wear occasionally. And it's, for me, it is something private. Um, but yeah, no one day to day like sees this. Like, but yeah, gender is just different for everyone and it can be different every day, change in the different seasons of your life. Um, but yeah, so the inspiration from this painting came from this painting on the left, uh, Origin of the World by Gustave Courbet, 1866. So I feel like it was pretty shocking painting of the time, but like this art in particular, like this kind of work, it emphasizes eroticism, like in this work. I believe that like this painting, like many other paintings and sculptures that depict a nude woman as a subject, it's an erotic image made for men. Like, I think this erotic imagery masked as art, for the male gaze. Um, but yeah, underneath like my clothes, like I look like this image on the left, but like that painting doesn't feel like me. Like, I needed to add a white t-shirt, briefs, a packer to feel like myself and feel confident. Um, and also, I just think it's funny to imitate fine art and just like modernize it and put like a dick on it. Like, I don't think sexuality needs to be so serious. I don't think it needs to be for anyone else's pleasure. But yeah, like, I don't think like packers can be sexual, but like it also helps people fit into their bodies, fit into a body that feels right to them, and doesn't have to do with sex at all. Like, it's absolutely different for everyone, but for me, it's not sexual and nothing, and not something like I use for sex. But like, I don't think gender has to be rigid. Like, it's fluid. Like, there's no rules. Um, so yeah, I feel like these two paintings, it's more of like contrasting for me. Like, I wanted to imitate it, but for me, it was more about like contrasting that like eroticism. Let's see. All right. That's actually the end of my presentation. If anyone has questions.
Great, thank you. Yeah, if you're savvy with the raise hand icon, feel free to do that. But I'm gonna go out to the gallery view and try and see.
Oh yeah, I can stop sharing.
Yeah, if you want to wave, I can also moderate that way. I can start us off, Sam. I've got a question. I believe it was when you were talking about the piece with Quinn and Dennis and discussing what a painting has to represent, whether or not it is intended. I found it intriguing. And so I'm very curious, you know, you could answer this in terms of like the artist in general or like personally, what you think. But my question was, how does an artist negotiate this responsibility with intent and guiding viewers to interpretation with also that responsibility of what it has to represent, right? So artist intent and the thinking of the viewer versus the separate part of what's the painting responsible for. How do you negotiate that?
Right. I think it's really hard. And it's kind of like this fine line. Like, I don't think like Black people need me as a white person to represent them. But I feel like also like my job as an artist is to like represent, for me, it's I want to represent queer people and just those relationships and how that might affect like the viewers like perception and maybe like get them kind of like thinking like in that kind of conversation, that context of like, you know, their sexuality is not like, it's almost like erased, like but yeah, I think there's just like this kind of fine line of artists and artist responsibility, and I like, I'm not here to represent someone's like struggles because I can't do that. So I feel like I just have to be as honest as I can.
Great, thank you. Other questions, comments? I had another one for you.
Yeah, go for it.
Because we were kind of chatting before.
Mhm.
And so when talking about redirecting the voyeuristic gaze to kind of exclude the cis male, exclude those kind of traditions, I was wondering if you see the focus on couples directly contributing to that exclusion as well. So like the single subject to be imposed upon no longer even exists as a potentiality, or if there's something else to deal with the specific coupling focus.
Yeah, I think when representing a couple, it does feel like this like intimate private moment that's just like you're kind of in their space. And so like I think as like an outsider, like the viewer, it like experiencing that, it in a way like they're kind of the outsider in it. And so like they kind of are in this more submissive passive role because now it's like this is my environment and I'm lounging and like comfortable on the couch with my wife and like what are you even doing?
Preserving the boundary.
Yeah.
Mhm. Awesome. Other questions, thoughts, comments?
I was just reading some of the comments.
Oh, in the chat, is there more stuff to unpack?
Well, I mean, if anyone thinks of any questions, like I'm on Instagram. It's just my last name, Moyer-Kardos. So you can always DM me if you like want to chat. But yeah, I really appreciate it, guys.
Yeah, thank you everyone for coming. The exhibition link is also in the chat, so you can, see all of Sam's work, review everything at your leisure, and then also check out everything else in the collection that it's kind of speaking in conversation with. Thank you.
Thanks,
Applause,
guys.
good hand to Sam. Great job. Thank you for coming. Take care, everyone.
Bye.